Uh, Good afternoon for all those who are joining from the Asian side, and probably maybe morning and evening for others who are joining from around the world. Uh, Today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic. Circular economy has been in discussion for for a few years now. I would say more than a decade. But probably the circular economic practices are visible in different parts of the world, in different parts of the countries, in different ways. It's just that uh, just after the Second World War, the linear economic principles that took the fore went, you know, into limelight and was the highlight of how the global economy ran. But with the climate change discourse and the discussions about sustainable development, principles of circular economy became very prominent and was considered as a critical thing for sustainable development. Therefore, SLYCAN Trust actually decided to conduct this important discussion as part of one of our projects on uh, creating participatory NDCs in a just recovery world, uh, with the support of the German Federal Ministry. Uh, this discussion is conducted. We have some eminent speakers joining us today to discuss about different aspects of how circular economy specifically could support achieving NDCs in a given country. We have Dr. Thusitha Sugathapala, Dr. Visaka Hidellage, Engineer Samantha Kumarasena, and Vositha Wijenayake joining as panelists. Uh, so first, while welcoming you all, I will, without also apologizing for the slight delay in starting, we would go to the first presentation. The first presentation will be done by Dr. Thusitha Sugathapala. He's a senior lecturer from University of Moratuwa, former DG at Sustainable Energy Authority of Sri Lanka, and a senior technical consultant at SLYCAN Trust. I would like all the speakers to briefly introduce yourself at the beginning of your presentation as well. Off to you, Dr. Sugathapala, to start off about circular economy and how it supports the climate action.
Thank you, Damit. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I think Damit briefly introduced me. I'm Thusitha Sugathapala, presently working as a senior consultant at SLYCAN Trust, especially on sustainable development area, and also I'm an academic working at an engineering university in Sri Lanka called University of Moratuwa. Basically, my area of expertise going into energy and environment, sustainable development, and environment management areas like waste management, air quality management, and so on. However, today the discussion would be more on the concept of circular economy. So that's I will pay the part to the today's discussion how this concept circular economy linked to or contribute to the conventions, global convention like climate action or SDGs. That's basically the area I'm going to discuss. Here, I will talk under these topics very briefly. First, the basis, the essence of this topic, highlighting some key features so that the basis for today's discussion will be highlighted there. Then going into the key root cause, in my opinion, for this particular issue or the present challenges we are facing. So we'll discuss that, and already Damita indicated the terminology linear economy. So that's one key area where we try to see these challenges within the economic framework. So then we look at in that context, the solution also should come in that direction. So that's where what you call circular economy. That's a kind of a solution framework for this issue. All this only economy term is there, but you'll find that that's go beyond economy too. with the term circular or circularity that's linked to, in fact, sustainability. Circularity means sustainability, the same word in a way or same meaning. And therefore, the solution framework, when you talk about sustainability, we have a more comprehensive solution framework like 2030 Agenda and SDGs, as well as the Paris Agreement for climate action and NDCs. So that's where the linkage there. So I will talk about these linkages between these three: the circular economy, and 2030 Agenda and climate action. So basically, here we are talking about a system, which is a very complex system, which involves humans. But then, of course, we have the major elements as air, atmosphere, water, hydrosphere, the soil, lithosphere, and ecosphere, plant and animal, which create biosphere in which we are part of that human society. And there are continuum interaction between these elements which create environment. These reactions are complex and also dynamic, so the environment also have that feature. And especially we see a continuum change in the environment, which has now become not really cyclic or endurance, but going into unsustainable direction. So that's where the human presence, its dominance clearly seen with the reactions or changes in the environment, especially in relation to degradation of the quality and also depletion of resources, which and also adverse impact on those where human society, basically the activities, anthropogenic activities, contribute to these issues. And in fact, in turn, this degradation of environment has become the root cause for most of the other global challenges, which in fact highlighted in detail in 2030 Agenda. Through the solution framework, we can identify the solution. Therefore, the sustainable development challenges also linked to this environment strongly, for which the human society are responsible of. So then one of the key framework where we can understand this the overall impact on the environment, I would say, is a planetary boundaries is one of the basic approach to understand it. So here it indicate different planetary boundaries. Some are already exceeded, some are about to, like climate change, and some are in fact at present so okay, but can be going into red or other uncertain high risk area in the future. And another important aspect is there are certain areas where even we don't have information to see whether we are okay or not. So therefore, these are basically linking to the environmental implication of the human society, their development. Other aspect we are talking about is resource consumption and depletion. So this diagram indicate the first, the upmost one is the GDP growth, which indicate economic growth. The second one, the material extraction. So you can see there's a strong coupling between the GDP, that the economy, with material extraction. So this material basically talk about all the different materials we use for our development. Some of the materials are renewable, but some are not. But then there's a quality issue. Although some are renewable, there are issue in the quality. So that's a concern. Then we have population growth that also contribute to basically GDP growth as well as material extraction. But one of the key indicator here is this, what we call material intensity, which indicate the intensity of material in economy. Basically, how much material, let's say tons, we use to develop 1 unit of GDP. So that's what we call material intensity. We can see for years like 1980s, for example, towards 2000, we were able to improve. We can see material intensity is going down. That means that it's become more resource, resource efficient. I mean that we are becoming better. But then beyond 2000, we can see the reversal. That there are the material intensity become higher and higher. Mean that we are going in a wrong direction in terms of this, resource efficiency. So why it reduces basically the technological advancements. So we're able to control this issue and we have become more efficient. But beyond 2000, of course, technology advancements happen, but something took over the technology advancement. So in fact, we are having more advanced, higher improvement in technologies and innovation. Still, there's some other elements which reverse this long-term gain. So that's basically the lifestyle and excessive consumption of resources, and also unplanned development. So that's where this economy thing come there, that even the technology is not in a position today to control this adverse, the growth or the issue in this way. So therefore, we have a serious issue in terms of sustainability in the today's economic model. So that happened especially in the around 2000. So that we can see same trend in even carbon emission and other similar, the indicators. So root cause, therefore, basically is obvious that our presence in the environment, the biosphere, has affected much more than the biosphere can handle itself. So that's what's shown here, that so usually we say biosphere is atmosphere, then the hydrosphere, air and water, we have land, geosphere, then we have plant and animal. But then of course, having we human as part of this biosphere animal, we have created much more impact on this environment and biosphere. That was illustrated here. Thereby, although we were able to gain considerable, socio-economic benefit through this industrial revolution and subsequent development, there are increasing threat by various economic models, which made it like the same economic model has given rise to much more, the negative impact, threaten the sustainability. So therefore, we have an issue here, basically linked into, of course, human, but more importantly, our the development model, the economic model. That's where we talk about this linear economy. So that's where the topic of today's discussion come in. Although this economy term we use here, we have to remember that these are basically also linked to the nature and social aspect. So therefore, fundamentally, this circular economy also linked to sustainability. So when you look at linear economy, you all are aware that that even today, most of the economies, even in developing countries, most of the countries, we have this, taking resources and then manufacturing and getting services, product, we consume, and then we have finally the waste, which we don't have a system to contribute to the resource, the coming back. So the contribution to improve the resources. This is the linear economy model. Even today, this is the basic model used by many economies. So this is also called what you call this take, make, dispose. The linear economy is a linear model which drives the economic development, and we have seen that with this economic development, although we gain some socio-economic development, there are many adverse impact and threatening the sustainability. So that's why we have this issue in multiple dimensions, covering social, environmental, and also economic dimensions too. So that's the root cause basically. Therefore, although we talk about the sustainability looking at 3 dimensions and so on, where economy is only 1 dimension, when you look at the root cause, it's finally boiled down to one of the key element as the economy. So in that case, your solution framework also can be derived by addressing this issue with the economy. So that's why what you call circular economy, that principle will close the loop. Thereby, most of the negative impacts we have seen earlier can be managed. So this is a framework in which most of the cities, the countries trying to develop now, what you call green economy agenda and so on, trying to see how this model can be used, of course, for industry, but beyond that, like cities, human settlements, regions, localities, countries, and so on. So the concept has been well developed even prior to the 2030 agenda, in like even climate action in 2015. This has been elaborated with, for example, cleaner production and so on. We have sustainable consumption and production coming into this model now. There are very few key attributes there, which are like a guiding principles of SDGs even or 2030 agenda. We have similar type of broader areas driving the concept. Here also we have a few of those, like thinking system, indicating that the piecewise approach is not advisable. We had to go for system. This is very similar to what we see in even SDGs. We talk about interconnections and indivisibility. So this is a similar concept, what we call thinking system. Build resilience through diversity. Again, this is one of the very fundamental attribute in the circular economy. This also this element also present in when you look at 2030 agenda. Resource from renewables, going for circularity there also. Then design for sustainability. Again, the word sustainability come here. Then waste is a resource, or waste as a resource. All these are basically, when you look at this one, these are linked into circularity as illustrated in this diagram. And the circularity basically indicate again the sustainability. So therefore, when you look at the circular economy, this has been, as I said, deliberated for decades. So therefore, there are basic concepts which are being or which can be implemented in implementing this concept, like life cycle thinking, create to create design, resource efficiency, performance economy, shared value, values for ecosystem services. Then we have industry ecology, and so on. There are many different concepts which are developed and also which are being applied in this, at different levels. So maybe industry level to city level. And also there are many other. Then green economy is one of the collective, terminology we use. So when you look at all these different concepts within green economy or circular economy concepts, tools, or practices, you will see the connection between the sustainable development, because all these are basically linked to not only economy. It talk about the environment, it talk about the society in an integrated manner. That means it's basically talking or the driving the concept of sustainable development. So therefore, we see a link here. But when you look at this 2030 agenda, we don't see this terminology, circular economy, anywhere, like even these goals or targets or indicators. This word circular economy does not appear. But then although the word is not there, the meaning, the concepts are there. So therefore, another solution framework, when we talk about this today's complex, the challenges, came with 2030 agenda as well as Paris Agreement, that's for climate action, 2030 agenda for sustainable development. So this is a kind of a comprehensive overarching framework for solving the key challenges, like 2030 agenda covers all the challenges, including climate action. Then Paris Agreement talk about the climate action. So that's another solution framework. So now we are looking at two different aspects: circular economy in one area, the 2030 agenda, including Paris Agreement and climate action as another one. So here again, try to give a solution to some of the challenges we are facing, the key challenges. Of course, SDGs talk about 17 areas, 17 goals, but then we have climate action as one of the goal. But then the Paris Agreement, it's basically on climate action. Now, so when you talk about this interlinkage, that's why, like how these are interlinked. Circular economy, 2030 agenda, and climate action, we have presented the concept. Now we look at the present situation in 2030 agenda as well as climate action. Of course, the global community committed to tackle these multiple challenges by become signatory of all these conventions. But when you look at the present, the achievement, the significant, we don't see much, not to the expected level to reach the target by 2030. Why? Because there is a significant economic, societal, and institutional changes are required to achieve those. So, and therefore, we are lagging behind. So in that context, we see that the more kind of a ground level interventions are happening in line with this green economy, basically linked to the circular economy, basically national and local government as well as even businesses, other stakeholders are responding to this issue at ground level. So therefore, in that context, since these are basically integrated and interlinked, you can use effectively the concept of the circular economy as a transformational driver for delivering SDGs. So therefore, economic transformation required to deliver the SDGs and of course climate goals could be best achieved via circular economic practices and tools, where we can implement on the ground at different level, institutional, even home level, many levels. And therefore, circular economy becomes an effective implementation modality for the 2030 agenda as well as Paris Agreement, that's based sustainable development and climate actions. So basically, what we usually do is now to see this interconnectedness. Visually we have this mapping. We map different actions against SDGs, again climate action, and so on. Then we can see this interlink, and thereby you can frame particular interventions, let's say a project, program, or policy, to have multiple outputs by having the what you call co-benefits or synergies optimized, and also by removing the or minimizing the trade-offs or the the conflicting effects. So in that case, usually we can do this mapping. I just want to show you one such mapping. There's a mapping of the circular economy against the 17 SDGs that's in the top line row, and also their targets. So this 1 to 10 and ABCD represent the SDG, let's say 1.1, 1.2, and so on. That's the SDG 1 and so on. And then SDG 17, we have multiple areas like ABCD. Those represent like technology, capacity, and so on. There are 7 areas there, sub areas. So this particular one compare the role of the circular economy and effect of SD on circular economy also against these 169 targets. All these colored boxes show these 169 targets. So this the dark green one shows the direct contribution, the most strongest interlink. The light blue one represents the indirect contribution. So we have a contribution, positive contribution, but indirectly. Then there are this yellow one represents the progress will support the progress in SDGs will support the circular economy, and vice versa. So when you have a circular economy intervention, then progression of these yellow indicators will be addressed. Then the ash color one is basically no noticeable link. You don't see much relation. But then again we have this the orange color one, cooperational opportunities, means basically presently we may not have a direct or noticeable link, but that will provide if we formulate your project by looking at this circular economic concepts, tools, practices, you can make this particular indicator supported by the circular economy concept if we formulate it properly. So therefore, this the orange one is also become important because that will provide opportunity to have a synergy and co-benefits. That's basically I want to highlight, meaning that circular economy is not different from sustainable development. Of course, it's not the same as sustainable development. Circular economy look into addressing the 3 dimensions of sustainability: social, environment, economy, through the economic angle by making it circular. Means circularity is basically linked to the sustainability. So that's all from my side. I will stop here. Probably we can discuss further during the discussion period. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sugathapala. So, like it was very important highlighting the linkage between SDGs, the climate action, which is part of SDGs, and how circular economy would support that. And the next presenter, like, would link up what stated here, like industry, and another area that we are looking at is uh, the climate action, specifically NDCs, the nationally determined contributions. So I would like to invite engineer Samantha Kumarasena, who's the Chief Executive Officer of National Clean Up Production Center, to highlight these aspects, specifically looking at the industrial sector and also the SDGs that bounce around it, like the industry and the economy. Mr. Kumarasena, over to you.
Hi everyone, good afternoon and good morning to you. First of all, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to SLYCAN Trust for inviting me and join with National Clean Production Center to participate in this valuable conference on circular economy applications. I'm Samantha Kumarasena, working as the Chief Executive Officer of National Clean Production Center. Therefore, in my topic, I'm supposed to discuss the incorporation of circular economy practices in the local industry sector. Basically, this circular economy is a conceptualization. So many practices were going on. Most of them were, again, packaged into circular economy concept. But in addition to that, very importantly, circular economy has a lot of added advantages. So it follows the business models. So sustainability is there then. In addition to that, resource circulation is heavily targeted. So therefore, in local industry sectors in Sri Lanka, so these practices partially were there for last 2-3 decades, but now a lot of new things are also started, particularly in a much more broader perspective, like not at the firm level, but we have to move in the industry clusters, industrial park level, like that. Those things yet to come. So let me take you through very briefly about spectrum of the circular economy applications for the industry sector. So hope you are familiar with the concept and the principles of circular economy. So based on that, I would like to highlight the circular economy practices, because I am supposed to discuss the application side of it. When we, for easy to remember, we can conceptualize it like this. So in circular economy also, mostly the strategies, first you have to target for the source reduction. So that is the best mean. So that design out waste and pollution, not only that, source reduction pay off, so that you can save resources. That means you can improve the profitability, so that it's one of the very, very attractive option for the industries in any part of the world. So then next part is, in fact, now we have to go for sustainable product innovation. In fact, we are using various tools. I will discuss a little bit about that. Next thing, now we have to heavily focus for the resource circulation. The options we have for the resource recirculation. But we must understand, you cannot do circulation just starting after the end of life. You have to plan it. So mainly from the design stage. Then the other part is very important. That is innovative circular business models. So that it's a system approach, so that you can achieve very much in terms of sustainability when you go for such novel business models, going away from the operational level, so that then you are changing at the strategy level. So then, design out waste and pollution. In fact, for this matter, according to the MacArthur Foundation, they define it like this, but this includes source reduction purely. So therefore, one of the, actually globally, the most tested and proven tool for this aspect is the resource efficient cleaner production. So in Sri Lanka also, it has been practicing for long time in the country, thousands of companies. So therefore, this has been identified in new NDCs in Sri Lanka as under the industry sector as the one of the main NDC is implementation of the RECP in key sectors in the country. So to achieve the objectives by 2030 in terms of climate mitigation. So we have locally also experience in implementing this one. So therefore, it has various techniques. Among them, when you take, for example, input substitution, it connects to the circular economy principle called preserving the natural capital. So then, under this point, under NDCs in Sri Lanka, it has identified to switch on to the biomass energy heavily, so that it will be a input substitution, but at the same time it will address the climate impacts. So that is why it's included into NDCs as well. Then there are some NDCs like going for trigeneration, etc., to improve their efficiency. Then regarding product modification side, we have various tools which will couple then for our next strategy. Resource circulation also facilitated when you go for right product modification. In fact, cleaner production techniques include resource circulation. So this concept has been developed by UNEP far back in 1990, but still it includes entire spectrum of the options for the resource reduction as well as for resource recirculation. But the attention for resource recirculation is secondary. Priority is for the source reduction in RECP. Well, to facilitate the resource circulation as well as to go for novel products, sustainable product innovation, we need another very valuable methodology, that is the eco-design. So this facilitates the resource circulation directly. There are two leading methodologies. One is the design for environment. The other one is design for sustainability. So these methodologies are adopted by the industries so that those are designed to systematically integrate the environmental impacts throughout the life cycle into the product in the design stage, so that you can reduce the environmental impacts over the life cycle of the product. Then, other than facilitating the resource recirculation, this eco-design facilitates the novel product innovation as well. In addition to the eco-design tool, today, actually NCPC is working in last 4 or 5 years to popularize some of the key concepts which are very much necessary to promote the circular economy practices, which are actually product innovation, that is green chemistry and green engineering. In addition to that, biomimicry is also very useful tool for the novel product innovation. So because when you are going to apply circular economy principles, you need the circular economy strategies and practices, so that you are again connecting to various tools. Then, so promoting the resource recovery, recycling, and the waste-based industries is another very important priority strategy under circular economy, which is in fact earlier it actually under the source reduction approaches it was secondary, but now it has been realized. In fact, now when EU adopted the Circular Economy Declaration in 2015, they had a target to circulate about 80% of the resources within Europe. So therefore, this is very much in the circular economy, the priority is given very much for the resource recirculation. So by 2010, according to this UNEP report, only these are the percentages of various elements that are recirculated. The total percentage of the resource recirculation was 9%. Now we have a Herculean task to improve it to a very high degree under circular economy applications. So then this 8R model also very, very useful. So it includes, in addition to the 3R strategy, target to extend the product lifetime. You may have read in the circular economy principles, extended product life is one of the key principles. Some strategies targets are refurbishing, repairing, remanufacturing. Remanufacturing is gone very much now. So for the products which were not really taken as important. So those strategies will be very useful for that application. Then the other key application, actually promising tool, is the industrial symbiosis. So under circular economy literature, sometimes it is named as the Kalundborg symbiosis. Reason, because world first eco-industrial park was Kalundborg in Denmark. So it started in 1959, but it was a typical industrial park. But purely for business benefits, companies started exchanging their resources. So the waste mainly. So then waste of one company becomes a resource for the other company. So then later on, various countries started eco-industrial parks. So then even UNIDO has a priority strategy to promote eco-industrial parks globally. They prioritize various regions and then support to go for eco-industrial parks and develop their practices. So this will help us to go for make use of the waste as a resource. When you cannot recirculate within your company, you can give it to another neighboring industry for the recirculation. So therefore, in NDCs of Sri Lanka also, it has been included as the establishing eco-industrial parks and villages. So that is a target for next 10 years. Then I would like to touch upon about the product service systems. That means novel business models. So these are developing today in all the parts of the world. Service-oriented business models. As you know, products are replaced by services. It happens in every country. Rather than you buy the product, you tend to buy the service so that you get a expert in behind other than you do the job. So therefore, it is technically sound, more economical, resource efficient service will be there. In fact, all this eco-design and then this service model, everything revolve around one of the basic concept, that is your focus change from the product to the functional requirement, because all the products in the world has been created to fulfill a functional requirement. But over the time, we forget the functional requirement. We start demanding the product. I need a clean home. Need is, you know, but what you demand is actually, I need cleaning products for that. Okay, I need cleaning products so that I will have a clean home. Now, this concept is getting changed. For example, now assume now your own vehicle or your company vehicles are cleaned or washed in your premises or in your office premises by your people, your driver. So what happened there? So he's not an expert in cleaning the vehicle, as well as wastewater generated is not running to a treatment plant properly. So pollution is also there, resource inefficient. Then the service quality is also not that high. So what you can alternatively do, you can get that expert service so that they handle the job with the new technology, they treat the wastewater, and of course, it is the it is the it is an example, very simple example I am taking for this change. So it has happened. It has been happening everywhere for different industrial applications as well. Then product ownership to the product utility. As you know now in your office, rather than you buy photocopier machine, you get it rented. So it happens in everywhere now. So like that, most of the products you can get as a, rather than product ownership, it is service ownership. Now, what is the advantage there? Then this product is owned by the manufacturer in that model. Then manufacturer take the product back. So then that manufacturer is capable of making use of those resources. In any product, about the 70% of the value is the raw materials. So those materials can be recirculated effectively with this business model. So I visited one photocopier manufacturing company. They recirculate 95% of the materials into new photocopiers, not external recycling, but internal recycling. So then you must very much emphasize on this, that to do so, you have to design the product based on the eco-design principles. Then only you can do that kind of miracles. So it is really facilitate the recirculation, otherwise you cannot do so. Then there are some business models like circular subscription concept. So then rather than you buy the product, you get it rented. So in 2017, I attended a circular economy conference in Helsinki. So even in Helsinki, there was a display of the startup businesses, circular economy business startups. So then so many such circular subscription business concepts were demonstrated. Even child clothes and so many things are done in that way, even in a expensive city like Helsinki. Travel solution is very much in existence today. So various service providers are there, but there's a very high scope to improve there. So then by 2025, some countries target to have a very high level of improvement in the circular travel solutions. So in my limited time, I would like to conclude my presentation with this. In the discussion session, I hope to enjoy some of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumarasena. A very informative presentation highlighting, key aspects, how the industry sector is gearing to, implement circular economy. Some concepts that you mentioned is, are now seen in Sri Lanka, for example, the, against product ownership using the product utility, like, the Uber and, Pick Me, where instead of you owning a vehicle, that you tend to, more rent out the vehicles and use the utility of having the transport service being available. And there were very many interesting points that you highlighted. I would ask the participants to since we would take all the questions at end of all the 4 presentations, please do note down your questions. If not, you can also write them down in the chat, so we will take them up, and you will also not forget the questions. So we'll take up all the questions in a common panel after all the presenters have presented. We would now move into Dr. Visaka Hidellage. She has been working in the development sector for many years, working at UNDP and then Practical Action Sri Lanka, South Asia region as well. Dr. Visaka, like highlighting, linking to Dr. Sugathapala's presentation previously, small scale industries is a critical part of our economy, and also the gender parity, one of the key elements of achieving SDGs. We would like Dr. Visaka first introduce yourself at the beginning of the presentation and also highlight the key important elements under these specific areas. Over to you, Dr. Visaka.
Okay, thank you very much, Damitha. Yeah, just to add to the brief introduction that Damitha made, like he said, I have been in the development sector for many years, over 30 years, and worked in Practical Action Sri Lanka and South Asia office, leading the team here in South Asia region, as well as more recently, the last up until 2018, I was in charge of the UNDP Sri Lanka's environment portfolio as the assistant country director of environment, leading the work there with various government agencies and ministries. So with that background, I would like to just give you some thoughts I have. I'm sorry, I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, so I hope I can make this brief presentation interesting enough so that you all are really bored at the end of the presentation. So with that, let me also, before I begin, thank Damitha and the rest of the team for inviting me to participate in this important discussion. So as mentioned earlier, now what I will do is I will divide the presentation into just to touch upon what the circular economy means for the small industries, especially to the micro scale industries, where the women are predominantly present, and touch upon a little bit about micro industry in Sri Lanka, and why circular economy is important to micro industry as and role of women, and how can in promotion of circular economy women can contribute, not just contribute, why women should be actually included. So we are talking about inclusivity of the circular economy, why inclusivity is so important. So just before, I mean, when I begin with I think when it comes to inclusivity of the circular economy, international discussions talk about when they talk about inclusivity, it talks about international value chains and including developing countries, etc. But I have yet to see really work on how to include vulnerable people. So I hope this shed some thinking into that. So as mentioned earlier, so circular economy is of course is considered as a new model for resilient growth. It's a new model, right? It's so and internationally we are talking about radical transformation in the way we use resources, way we approach the production systems, and in order for it to happen, institutional policy and political transformations are being discussed, right? So so I mean, a lot of explanation has been given on the circular economy, so I won't go into the detail. But very often, circular economy is confused with waste and recycling businesses or that industry. So, of course, it's also about waste. You making waste useful, inputting into another industry, one one person's waste can be a source of, resource for another industry or the same industry. But it is actually, it's much bigger than that, much bigger concept than that. It's a culture. So in order for economy to work, it needs to be thought about in a much bigger way than just managing and recycling waste. The large informal sector in Sri Lanka or any country, they have always been practicing. This may be a new concept to the world, to people because of the climate change, environment issues that earlier was explained. But informal sector in developing countries particularly have been anyway engaging in this circular activities. And if you really want to talk about the waste and recycling business in Sri Lanka, and I'm sure in many other developing countries, informal sector is also engaged in electronic waste, e-waste recycling, phone repairs, and all sorts of, what you call value adding, or sometimes in what they call upcycling processes. So this is so for the informal sector or the micro industry. This is not a big transformation as for the rest of the world, hopefully. So in a way, if we can target micro industry, which is already practicing some of these concepts, they can actually, what we call leapfrog, they can be pushed to do what we actually is planning to do, right? So hopefully the political and structural changes that are being planned at the international levels and the national level would include this aspect into account, because if you really want to get it going, then talk to the people who are already doing it. So then let's look at for example, the micro scale enterprise sector in Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka industrial sector, we have about 1 million enterprises according to the 2015 statistics from the Department of Central and Statistics, little over 1 million. Now, out of that 1 million enterprises, about 936,000 are micro enterprises. So that shows that how important this sector to our economy, right? So so this is when we are talking about micro sector, we are talking about enterprises that employ about 5 people, or sometimes up to about 15 people, but no more, right? So they are also a very important source of employment generation. So they employ over 3 million people in the country, and the statistics also show that about 26% of this industry is female-headed, right? So when we say female-headed, I'm sure it is not as as lucrative as it means. There are also people like individual women who are working with a couple of others, quite poor, because the conditions are not very good for the micro enterprises. So even if you take the labor force, generally women are higher in the labor force. They in the micro scale industry, or even in the industry, women are doing jobs that are semi-skilled and in unsatisfactory working conditions, long hours, exposure to occupational and health hazards, quite vulnerable, little job security. So all sorts of things are there in the industry. But when it comes to the micro industry, there are other challenges such as non-recognition, information, disparity in access to information, the access to services, all sorts of issues are there. I'm sure this is there for everyone in the micro enterprise, but it's much more for many of the women given the context in the country. So therefore, when we think of circular economy, right? So far, much of the discussions are around environment and business or economic aspects of the circularity. And very little analysis has been done, as I said earlier, about the social implication and inclusivity, and particularly the role of women. Women engaging or even leading, in some cases, the necessary transformation in the circular economy. This is not necessarily only because women should be included so that they can also get benefited from the circular economy, but because the circular economy transformation that we all want can be pushed forward by engaging women because of a certain way that they engage in the enterprises, right? So now, having said that, we all know that there's a lot of discussions are going on about the circular economy and how we should be, engaging it, how to get the value chains and the international value chains, etc. But actual, action is still very little. We still see continued negative impact on environment, waste generation, climate change increasing, etc. And when it comes to women who are dependent on subsistence, work and self-employment, natural resources are actually strained. So they understand what's going on, right? So they are more likely candidate to engage in positive transformation because they will see immediate benefits from it. Sometimes they don't understand, maybe they don't understand full extent of the impacts that they are exposed to, but women are during their work are exposed to hazardous condition, occupational hazards are there. So for women, men and everyone, when it comes to why women should be focused in circular economic transformation, now studies from around the world has shown that women are more sustainable consumers, and they are more inclined to work on sustainable production aspects, and more sensitive to ecological and environmental and health concerns. And women are more likely to recycle, minimize waste, buy organic food, look at eco-labor. So many things have been done. Now, if you take examples from Sri Lanka, I mean, before going even to micro enterprise, if you just look at domestic work, right? Now, even when everything, the circularity culture is built into women's work. Now, if you take, for example, I don't know how many of you all are aware of jackfruit, which is very popular food in Sri Lanka. Now, cooking jackfruit is a cumbersome thing. It has a thick crust, thick thorny crust, and it has inside, latex that is very sticky and gluey. But when you take out those bulbs and the seeds, they are very, very tasty, and people like it. So women go through that cumbersome process of taking out that, but they don't throw a single part of the jackfruit, right? some are used for various other purposes, and basically given to feed the cattle. So everything there, right? Everything there has been used. There's nothing called waste, nothing called. So this is a local resource that usually women use when there is very little other food, and everything is used, right? So I mean, I can go on to details, but I'm sure many of you know what I'm talking about. So it's something that women inherently have. They know how to work with resources without looking at the different users of resources and minimizing waste. And then there are other things like domestic enterprises, what we call cottage industries, mat weaving, right? The mat weaving started with, certain leaves that have, coconut leaves that have fallen. They pick it up, they bring it, they process it, and they make mats out of it. So this is something that they know. And then the cottage industries like cashew processing, right? So the women are, the resource itself is from around that area, right? So they don't have to, so they are local economy. So people who supply women who are processing cashew are from the local area, and there are supply routes that they depend on. They master the skill of processing. Cumbersome job again, not an easy job to do, but women do it at home while attending to other work as well. So their time is managed to support their productive work as well as the reproductive work. And then when it comes to processing cashew, everything is internal, right? So they use the cashew, the husk that is that is otherwise considered as waste, to heat for heating during the processing. So what I'm trying to say is women are very much inclined to understand circularity concept much better, because they do practice it at home and at enterprises, especially if they are owners. And there are statistics also say that 26% of the enterprises are owned by women in Sri Lanka. So now so women, therefore, I mean, there has been many studies before for various other things to show that women can be drivers of change, and they can be decision makers at a particular level where the change can happen. So so if we really want to engage women to push the circular economic concepts forward, it's in a way very easy, but also very tough, because that's not it's not the normal in a normal institutional policy formulation. Some of these things are overlooked. So women need to be empowered. Now, in the current modern microeconomic sector in Sri Lanka, even in Sri Lanka, is quite diverse. It's no longer just the women processing cashew at home. We are talking about women who are running salons and beauty industry, women who are even, engaged in various, value chains related to tourism and other industries. So it's very, in a way, it's a sector that has also transformed, right? So in order for women to be engaged and become the drivers of change that we want them to be, they need to, first of all, they need to be included. They need to be included. They need to be, they need to have access to information. They should be all the incentives that are available for others should be available to them. And they can with that information, they should be able to engage. And if we can engage bulk of the women, bulk of the people in this micro enterprises who are women, then of course the enterprise itself will push forward. And then, as you can see from the statistics, bulk of the industrial sector consists of, number-wise, consists of micro enterprise and women. So there's no way we can ignore women and make circular economy work. So therefore, in a way, we don't have much of a choice in this matter. Now, if you take from international examples, also say that women-headed industries, it could be larger industries, medium-sized industries. For example, like industries like fashion industry has already started transformation. They are becoming more sustainable in their accessing of resources, clothing, shoes, accessories, so many things. There are already examples that women-headed industries are moving towards sustainable pathways. So we can use that as good examples when promoting it in Sri Lanka as well. It's not just about choice of material. They are also using reduction of material, looking at various fashions. They are the material, the use of material, recycling their own material, manufacture clothes from second-hand material and making it fashionable. So things like that are already happening. So, so therefore, I think I hope I have been convincing that we have a case to make circular economy inclusive in the sense socially inclusive. So women and men in the micro enterprises need to be included if we want our circular economy concepts to be adopted by the industry, but because of the sheer numbers are them. So we need to, when we are coming out with policies, standards, guidelines, incentives, whatever that needs to push this forward, we have to make sure that they are included. So with that, I hope I was clear, and thank you very much. I'm available for questions. I hope we can have a good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Visaka. I think you highlighted the importance and also like the statistical significance of the micro, small and medium enterprise sector, not only in Sri Lanka, in the developing world, and how already they are, compared to the large industries, are engaged in the circular economic processes. So how, best we should, align the policy and regulatory processes to make them as the key catalyst to make this conversion from linear economic principles to a circular economy. We would next go to Ms. Vositha Wijenayake, the Executive Director of SLYCAN Trust. I would also invite Vositha to introduce yourself just before starting, to discuss a bit more about circular economy and also how international processes could support promoting circular economy in achieving countries' NDCs and other sustainable development goals. Over to you, Vositha.
Thank you, Damita. Just going to check whether I can share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, Vositha.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Okay. So thank you, everyone. I hope I won't be repeating what others have said. I would like to keep things brief. So I work as the Executive Director of SLYCAN Trust, and we are co-hosting this session. And most of our work has a component on circular economy and elements of circular economy, which the previous speakers highlighted. I would just connect the dots and maybe give a few examples and indicators of how NDCs, circular economy could be brought into the international processes like UNFCCC on climate change work, as well as other ones that are global. And then also how this could connect to our actions at the ground level, as well as at national level. So we spoke a lot on the Paris Agreement and the NDCs. I presume you understand all of this right now, so I won't go into details. So under the Paris Agreement, in identifying the NDCs, many countries have certain sectors which are common. For example, energy would be one, and then in the developing countries, you would see agriculture, forestry, and natural resource-based sectors as priority in their NDCs. So looking at these NDCs, we could see how this could connect to circular economy, as illustrated by other speakers, and doing regional actions to ensure that integration of circular economy happens into the NDC processes at national level as well as regional level. So for example, if you're looking at food systems, there could be examples that Sri Lanka could share with other countries that could be replicated, or else it could be a common commitment across a region that could scale up the resilience, where we would have risk management as a component that we bring in circular economy through resilience building, as well as co-benefits that link in agriculture. For example, we could look at resilience in agriculture through links to circular economy, and some of these would connect with, for example, socioeconomic aspects, the cycle of production, as well as gender responsive actions and social protection. So there are cross-cutting ones that could be done as regional actions as well. And then just transition plays a key role, which we could take as something common for all countries. So looking at NDCs and circular economy, how we transition. So if you're looking at energy sector and circular economy is introduced into production and value chains, how can this be a transition that's just, are we losing livelihoods of people, or are we enhancing this through skill development and capacity building? So under just transition, we also focus on gender responsive actions, social protection, skill and capacity development of different livelihoods that we focus on. So these are all things that can be focus areas for international actions as well as national actions, and also knowledge sharing across countries and regions. So resilience building and holistic actions have been focused on in previous activities under the Paris Agreement, technical expert meetings, and different technical products out there for countries to use as well, which have also key components on circular economy. Another one we can look at is the food systems as a holistic, system itself says it, but a holistic food system would be the better word there. So one is the agriculture sector, as I mentioned. If you look at it, not in terms of production increase, but also as a holistic action that we do to build resilience, go to net zero mode, and also looking at how solar energy as well as nature-based solutions are introduced to these activities that we do. So for example, agroforestry could come in, and this would all link to a circular economy-based value chain as well as a process, because if you go into detail of ecology in terms of production as well. So there are different elements of circular economy, which you, I think, heard a lot on now, which can be integrated into agriculture sector. And then there's the Food Summit, the UN Food Summit, that is Food System Summit that's happening at the moment. There's a process that's happening. There's interventions by different stakeholders, countries, as well as non-government, as well as private sector youth that are being done at the moment. So this has identified 15 clusters and 50 solutions, which could include circular economy as one. And also this is focused on the action tracks of the UN Food System Summit. So if you look at action track 2, there's a key focus on sustainable consumption and production. And this is also an entry point for a lot of countries to build on solutions. And going forward, how this would happen in the next decade, the solutions being implemented at country level. Then moving towards localized food systems, this is again a discussion that that is there, the resilience at local level, and then going towards emission reduction through this, so that the transport systems are adjusted to this, which would result in emission reductions, and also climate risk management. So food systems has a key role in NDCs, and then also how we can integrate circular economy into this. Then nature-based solutions. So, I mean, a lot of us are working on this topic as well. And if you look at NDCs internationally, most countries, I think, I would say almost all the countries have nature and the integration of natural resources as a key component in the NDCs. And going forward, we have the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Then there's UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. And then there's a key focus on blue economy at the moment as well. And then there's also work that's around EPS that's doing research on this topic, and then how climate action, climate crisis could be part of addressing biodiversity loss. So how these aspects could be brought in to the NDCs, plus how circular economy could connect to this, is also something we need to look into. So for example, if you're looking at oceans and the coastal and marine ecosystems, the pollution aspect, how to address pollution, protect the environment and the nature, the ecosystems, as well as livelihoods, the vulnerable communities, would also directly connect with circular economy. And then how waste management could be done in a way that's entrepreneurial, as well as creating livelihoods with communities in protecting the climate as well as the environment. So that's something we can look at. And then also restoration of mangroves and other ecosystems that are there, reforestation, all these would come as something important, and these would have an element of economic empowerment as well, while we're looking at solutions that connect to NDCs. So going to economic empowerment, I think Visaka mentioned a lot on this. So I won't go into too much detail, but just to indicate that circular economy aspect will link with NDCs and then connect to resilience. And then we would have this economic empowerment that comes in. So livelihoods that come in, identification of different sectors that we can focus on. These could be traditional ones or introducing new sectors that could be focused on economic empowerment and then connecting with circular economy. So for example, tourism could have it could have a component on economic empowerment. It could have a component on nature-based solutions. It could have a component on economic empowerment through rural communities being involved, biodiversity protection. So there's like a cycle or a system that can be holistic, having all these aspects, and also gender responsive actions integrated to this. And then economic diversification with response measures. So this is under the Paris Agreement as well. So we're not focusing on gender responsive actions. It could also connect to response measures. And most countries that are small island states or islands have tourism as a key component on of focus of response measures. So for example, if you look at Maldives, one of the priority sectors that we're looking at for response measures, which has a connection again to circular economy, would be tourism. And this would be similar for Sri Lanka, where we could invest a lot of actions to be implemented with the integration of circular economy in the tourism sector. This could be the waste management aspect, this could be the conservation aspect, and then generation of livelihoods. Economic diversification, again, looking at the food systems. So we could have the primary crop, but then we could have alternate systems of developing livelihoods that could be linked to economic diversification, which would generate or enhance the existing resilience of communities to climate change. So this would be a key component that we could connect to adaptation-based NDCs, even if not for the emission ones, but both can be focusing on economic diversification in different ways. So for mitigation, I think this would be important, having circular economy as part of this, looking at the efficiency of resources as well as energy consumption and production needs. And then it would also be important to, I think, have multi-actor driven actions, which would scale up NDC ambition as well as circular economy's benefits, because if we have the private sector involved, the change of engagement of stakeholders, especially the government sector at local as well as national level. This could create a lot of impacts, not just locally, not just nationally, but internationally as well. I actually want to highlight a bit on the fashion industry as well, because we're doing some work on this. And also it has a lot of not necessarily national, but also international implications, because we have the larger fashion industry where the production is done outside of some of these countries. Say Sri Lanka might be producing a product, but it would necessarily not be consumed in Sri Lanka, but it would be in another country, and where does the emission get counted, and how does this product have a value chain that is circular. So that's something important I think we need to look at. And there are certain initiatives that are happening. I think Visaka highlighted this also already. So the UNFCCC has a fashion charter where this was in, I think, Katowice during COP24, 23, I forget the year. But so basically, there was an initiative that was set up where the bigger brands or any producer and other people in this sector, service providers, could connect and aim for something which is climate friendly. So this could be through production being reduced, the production being local, the value chains that are taking into account sustainable consumption of resources, then sourcing local aspects for raw material. So these are different elements that we focus on, and all these would connect to circular economy. So for example, if you're collecting waste in cleanups in the coastal and coastal sectors, and if this plastic is used for production of material which can turn into something fashion-based, that could come under this fashion chart as well. I think there are certain actions that are already happening on this. I think MAS, certain brands have production that is based on waste and recycling of waste. So these would come under the fashion charter. And looking at the workforce, because if it's a local workforce and then how they get benefited and social protection is there, could enhance the capacities of scaling up circular economic elements in our production chains, as well as making sure it's a holistic production cycle that we have. And these would all feed into how we calculate emissions, how resource efficiency could move towards emission reduction, as well as transparent and accountable processes, because these are larger chains of production that could create a lot of change, not just nationally, but also internationally. So I just wanted to highlight a few things, entry points that we could connect to when we are working on circular economy. But I'd be happy to answer anything that you have as questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vositha, illustrating like the entry points and opportunities in the international arena for countries to specifically developing countries to start initiating the circular economic process in their development process. So I would like to open up now for you all to for the attendees to ask questions. You could post your questions in the chat, or you could also raise your hand. And yeah, so Samantha has raised your hand. You could unmute yourself and ask the questions.
Hi, can you hear me? Oh.
Yeah, your voice is dragging a bit, but we can hear you.
Okay, so I would like to thank all the speakers for the informative and well-integrated session. I would like to thank Dr. Visaka in particular for her thoughts on inclusivity and the role of women-led MSMEs in leading the transition to a circular economy at local levels. As a female entrepreneur belonging to that category, I agree with her on the role she elaborated. I would also like to add that in addition to engagement, access to risk-free funding is a major issue that we on the ground face. This issue with funding makes us in the grassroots vulnerable to exploitation in supply chains populated by sometimes well-meaning intermediaries. Also, the cost associated with the circular economic methods that Mr. Samantha Kumarasena mentioned in his talk affects the sustainability of our innovative and circular business models on the ground. This is where I see a massive regulatory gap in the Sri Lankan context, and there's a huge potential to use a combination of EPR schemes and taxation based on product circularity to funnel the much needed funding to these endeavors. So if Mr. Samantha Kumarasena or Dr. Visaka could kind of, hello?
Yeah, you could go and Samantha. I think there's some.
Yeah, if you could kind of tell us about what's the work that is kind of happening on this bridge this regulatory gap, and in terms of taxation, something like the carbon tax, but kind of linked to circularity of products. Is there any work happening in the Sri Lankan context at the moment?
Thank you, Samantha. Mr. Kumarasena, before you, probably like it was mainly directed to Mr. Kumarasena and also Dr. Visaka and Dr. Sugathapala and Vositha would also join in. But I would also add another question which is given in the chat. Varuni has asked, how can we push towards the 3 R's, repairing, recycling, reusing items when the market prices for a new product may not justify the cost of repairing that product or inconvenience caused. Second one is recycling may also consume more energy and may generate GHG. How can we find a balance? So that sort of relates to what Savanthi asked as well. Mr. Kumarasena, if you could start responding. Yeah.
Okay, so yes, we elaborated on the strategies and applications. Now, as you correctly mentioned, we have to create the enabling environment. So therefore, to sustain, there should be a business model for that one. So then we have some issues at the Sri Lankan context at the moment. So particularly now regarding EPR, now government is going to go for a regulation now. So I'm not from government, but as I have heard now, very soon they will come out with that they have drafted by Ministry of Environment, so that the financial model is actually today that even the various plastic, PET bottles, etc. So the collectors are not getting the right price, so therefore collection mechanism is weak, like that. Those sort of issues are there. But we have to see how it is happening in the other countries. Now, for example, India has become a country where the PET bottle recycling has been among one of the top recyclers in the world. India is there. How do they have this reverse logistics? So then I just compared, they pay more than us for the collection. So therefore, this pricing structure has to be regulated. That fiscal policy is very important. Then some more questions I think I showed here in this thing, that repair is repairing costs. So then when the new products are cheaper, can you promote the repairing? That is the question. Now, the point is this, now in EU, in Europe, as a developed region, so they have a market for the remanufacturing also. Remanufacturing is end of life, you give a new birth to the product. Repair means half of the life, then when it's out of order, either aesthetic life or technical life is over, so that you can repair and use it. So that anyway has an opportunity. The reason global trend is now material prices are going up. So then it has been noted, especially in the developed countries. So energy price in the industry is constant. So labor cost is going down. Why labor cost is going down? Because number of workers are getting lower because of automation. Energy prices are kept constant, though the energy consumption increase because renewable energy is supplied at a reasonable price, like that it's happening. But my material prices are going up. And so therefore, supplying the new products at a cheaper price will not be possible for the future. That is why even EU has adopted this declaration and getting ready for the future, because material is the most scarce resource in the world. So then that will be the future. So in addition to that, in fact, any country actually can regulate further this one with the tax structures. So then to promote this one, that is why certain policy level adaptation is required for circular economy. First of all, now EU has done that. So therefore, under that one, this kind of enabling environment can be created. But sorry, the other point you mentioned regarding the cost of recycling, I think there the recycling energy consumption is very much lower than the virgin. Now we have to go for the life cycle perspective. Then all these recycled products, it's cut down huge energy, embedded energy, as well as it cut down the GHG emission when you go for the recycling loop. Now, when you take metals like aluminium, their GHG emissions are very high. But if you go for recycled aluminium, so GHG emissions are less, energy consumption is less. Those are reflecting in the price. So therefore, it is the case. So recycling products will be even cheaper for the future, because for recycling, the raw material base is the waste. Now, even when we work with the industries, we have very well experienced that one. So the most profitable businesses are waste-based businesses today. Raw material base is the waste, because you are getting the supply of the raw material at a reasonable price. But in some cases, this collection and supplying in the pure form, that reverse logistic is not in order. Now, NCPC developed a training manual recently for CCC and Central Environment Authority to train the recyclers. So because now we have to upgrade them, then those things has to be happen. So therefore technical aspects are also should be improved. So you're absolutely correct. So things are not in order, but very soon it will be coming in order, because market demands that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kumarasena, for that description. Anyone else would like to add that question? There was a point on like how policies, procedures, and law could also help this out. Either Dr. Visaka or Dr. Sugathapala would like to come in.
Yeah, can I? Yeah, Sugathapala here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there are some initiatives by the government presently. Very recently, the president appointed the presidential task force on green socio economy with sustainable solution for climate change. There's a committee now, high-end committee comprising of most of the ministries and some experts. They are not yet fully operational, but I would say one of the key topic of concern it is financing aspect. So they might come up with some high-level intervention, policy level, and regulatory level in that. There's another very recent initiative by the government of Sri Lanka on developing a green development agenda for the government, for the country basically, which is led by Ministry of Power, but all the other key ministries are involved. In that, one of the 4 results areas they are looking at is green financing. So then central bank also, they have developed this roadmap for green financing in 2019. Now they are looking at this development of a tool for this and so on. There are some ongoing activities targeting financial institution there by central bank. So I would say there are some ongoing activities, though we don't have any package or anything yet. I think it seems to be one of the priorities by the government. We hope that this will be addressed. In addition, Ministry of Environment, they are just finalizing National Environment Action Plan, where this financing aspect has been totally addressed or rather considered. That will also come in a couple of months, and also environment policy being upgraded. That's also will supposed to come by, I think, 2-3 months time. So therefore, policy and other level of interventions are being happening, though yet we have gaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sugathapala. Visaka, you would like to go?
No, Damita, that's okay. Some of the things I wanted to say, Thusitha already mentioned. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Then there's another question about from Dennis. Do you have any concrete examples of how circular economy can be integrated with just transition towards climate-friendly, sustainable, and resilient society? Yeah, if any one of you all could share some of your experiences or any examples that you have seen where circular economy has been integrated with just transition. Doesn't necessarily have to be in Sri Lanka, it could be even outside the country, if you could bring in this.
Yeah, Sugathapala again, Thusitha. I think most of the time we refer to some international best practices where I think this aspect has been addressed, especially in very high-end, leading industries. It has not gone into the mass yet, especially when you look at Sri Lanka also. For example, Nike, when you look at their the business models and their products in the recent past, especially for the last maybe a decade or so, heavily based on this circular economy concept, looking at this transition, gender issues, child labor, and so on. Probably locally, some of the leading these garment factories like Brandix, MAs in certain branches of their loan for the whole company probably, but certain industries or other facilities, there are some integrated approaches which are not usually available in public domain as such. When they present their progress and so on, they indicate this, but we don't have like like communication examples to be presented. So therefore most of the examples comes in developed countries with multilateral agencies in that level. So we have very few, but then when you look at our some of these maybe as Visaka also, Dr. Visaka also indicated, some of the conventional, maybe ancient, or there are some processes, so facilities which maybe small scale, but fully capturing this concept, circularity. So sometime within certain economic, local region or maybe industry, but unfortunately we don't have a central place or anywhere we can present this one as a solid example. So therefore my response is very partial. Sorry for that. I think still we are lagging. Probably there's something happening, but we don't capture. So that's maybe something we can look at it, especially probably Cyclone Trust with NCPC. Probably we can work together to capture these initiatives and then make them available for others. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sugathapala. Anyone else would like to come in if you have any examples that you could share? Mr. Samantha, Dr. Visaka, Vositha?
It is true, as Dr. Sugathapala mentioned. So
There is a communication. Can't hear.
Samantha,
some of those practices are there. In fact, all these practices you can see, but it is not as a whole holistic model as such. Let's say we don't have any. Sorry.
Ms. Damita, there's a communication issue. Probably he can join again.
Mr. Samantha, we couldn't hear you. Your last words.
Okay, yes,
Lost.
yes. There's a issue so in internet connection. So it is true what Dr. Sugathapala mentioned. We cannot so in one place. That means there's no holistic model as such. That means if you can find a company who recover the used products from the market and make use of in the new products as such. So then I have seen one company in Japan. So 95% of the material is in recirculation. So, but in Sri Lanka, we don't have any such examples. One of the reasons is we don't have the entire life cycle within the country. Let's say now some rubber companies, for example, have developed sustainable products over their conventional product. They have done life cycle assessment with us to compare the impacts. But those products are exported. Then those products are not in a position to taken back to the country. So not only technical, but even regulatory problems are there in bringing back the waste to the country. So therefore, we are not in a position to make use of that waste to make the new product, though they have innovated a new product which can be developed from the actually partially with the waste of the product. So therefore, that sort of things are there. So, but hopefully for future, so these barriers will be cleared, and then we will be able to see such models in the local context also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kumarasena. Vositha, you had something to add?
Yeah, I actually would merge the answer to this with what I want to add a little earlier to what Varuni has said. So when you're looking at just transition and circular economy, I think one would be the resources that we're using, the raw materials. So there are a lot of entities in Sri Lanka, I think, looking at local production, which could be examples of that aspect of it. And then also livelihood generation would be one of these elements also. So if you're looking at local productions where we are engaging, say, I feel like Celine would be an example for these, where they're sourcing local material plus having local communities working with them. And some of these products also are recycled. So there are certain aspects of just transition and circular economy in their production. Some of the products that you have at Good Market, different aspects of theirs would also be aligning with circular economy as well as just transition. But I think a win which we have towards just transition, the larger perspective of things in fashion industry would be that even in Sri Lanka, we have higher standards of labor rights and protection at the moment. There's insurance schemes and risk transfer schemes that were not there about 10, 15 years ago in a lot of countries. So this could be something we look at as well as an example when we're looking at just transition and the production cycles, because we tend to ignore these aspects and focus on the materials and the sources and the production needs. I also want to highlight about this pricing thing that was mentioned. So I feel once things are as a fashion or a in thing, the sustainable lifestyles and purchases are something that people turn to as something that the in crowd or the best thing to do. The marketing aspect is there. There's a lot of purchases that happen, even if it's the pricing is not the most, even if it's not the cheapest, I would say. But there's also that mindset of everyone that needs to be changed from production to consumers when we are turning into something that is sustainable, climate friendly, as well as nature friendly. And I don't think this needs to be the cheapest also, because even now we have different products at different values. So while we are catering to the mass that is sustainable, there could be also circular products, circular economic based products that can be expensive as well. So it could be a customized product, it could be a designer product, which can be circular economic based also. It doesn't mean that everything has to be the cheapest as well. So we can look at these in different ways when we're looking at pricing as well, because a production cycle could have different demands for different groups of society as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Vositha. So there's one question which came quite earlier. Shihara has asked, is there in the Sri Lankan context, circularity index calculation is in progress to showcase the position of circularity. Is If so, what is the methodology? So is there a circularity index calculation process currently practiced in Sri Lanka?
Hello, sir. Hello.
Hello?
Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. I'm asking about, sir, that circularity index, the calculation, that methodology. According to the Alan MacArthur Foundation, they have introduced that in 2015, I think, some framework. In Sri Lanka, is it possible also that government or private sector, is it continuing now?
Damita, can I comment? I'm Sugathapala. Yeah. Of course, at present, I think individual companies with the, requirement of this parent company, they are having this type of this the carbon footprint and water footprint. There are other indicators they do as a part of their business itself. But as a national level, it has not gone to that thin regulatory level, but it's happening. Like there's some development in that context. Of course, trying to adapt to the local context too. Some of these indicators, there's one indicator being proposed for cities, urban resilient index, which is in line with UN Habitat, their guidelines. There's another one, urban governance index, and so on. So there are certain, which is not really circularity, but then these are similar indices being developed to benchmark the present situations, as well as some of the interventions, how it's going to impact on the what are the impact of different intervention and so on. So in the new the revised national environmental action plans, some of those indicators proposed at the government level will appear. But then if I think the Ministry of Environment, for example, will be ready to listen to this type of proposals. So unless they have not already started, but I presume that even Central Environment Authority also initiated some indicators, even the regulatory level for monitoring. So therefore, I think there's a possibility for incorporating this into the government regulatory or policy process because the interest is there. But I think presently we don't have anything on circularity, I think, in that level. But then in the future, there's a potential, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
I think we have to continue this discussion. I think this requirement and so on, probably NCPC and SLYCAN test, can take a lead on that, because already at NCPC is working on those areas. This they do audits and so on. Mr. Samantha, I think there may be possibilities to look into this at the request or at this concern. Probably I think there's a way forward through existing mechanisms, like even NCPC can take a leading role. Thank you.
Yeah, so in fact, your question, I missed your question, so because of connection problem, but I heard Dr. Sugathapala's answer. So then these indicators are
It was regarding
by companies in
circularity
voluntary
index,
basis.
Mr. Samantha.
It's a circularity index,
Yeah.
which has been proposed like maybe 5-10 years back.
Okay.
Still Sri Lanka, we don't see.
That's right. So then, mostly still those are in voluntary mechanisms, but there are tools like eco-labeling are also now getting established. So Ministry of Environment also working on the eco-labeling platform and so on. Then sustainable public procurement policy also coming up. So they are for government purchase sustainable products. Then to guarantee the sustainable product, then they can go for eco-label. All are considering the life cycle impacts. So then those existing tools will be useful. But these indicator systems are not that mandatory. So voluntary schemes are there. In addition to that, this national green reporting system also has those indicators. And in addition to that, this under the environmental awards programs, the companies who are going for these indicators are awarded. So like that, all voluntary mechanisms are in place, but it is not mandatory.
Thank you, Mrs. Samantha.
So
Since
most of the companies go for that, yeah, because of the buyer's pressure. So that is there. So therefore, that is another thing, supply chain pressure. So because of that reason, most of the companies go for those calculations. Thank you.
Yeah, we have 4 more minutes, so I'll take up all the questions that's in the chat box, sort of bundled into one, and ask all the panelists to go just one round, like answering these questions, and also probably highlighting your last statements about the circular economy and how it could be well integrated into the development process. So there was this question about like the circularity index, and then later on there were some questions about blended materials being used in the fashion industry, and not only fashion industry, but if you take even the plastics, these blended materials are the biggest problem for reuse and recycling. So how could those be addressed? And then again, also putting forward this, Dr. Visaka mentioned that there are small industries who are already practicing circular economic processes, but if you have something like a circular economic index, a circularity index, whether these small actors could benefit more in getting financial support and getting a loan. Like if your circularity index is high, you have a better chance of getting a loan, that sort of thing. So the how to empower the existing players who are actually practicing circular economic concepts. What could we do, and how could we bring in adding the international processes to further support countries to move forward in this regard? So it's a set of questions. We could each one of you could start giving your answer, not necessarily all of those, the specific ones that you would like to highlight and point out. Shall I start from Dr. Visaka?
Thank you, Damita. I think, yes, I think it's a good question. How do we reward, people who are already practicing circular economy? Because partly because of the culture, partly because of the status of the enterprises, people are almost forced to practice some of these good concepts, which are not necessarily being considered up until now as necessarily the necessary best practices, right? These are cost effective to improve the cost effectiveness to to survive. People have engaged in some of these things, but overall they are sustainable practices, resource friendly practices. So there has to be, we need to look at the enterprises from that angle to understand where they come from. But on the other hand, although they are practicing a particular type of circular economic practices, there could be other problems that they are struggling with, right? So therefore you need to look at everything together. For example, one can say that, you know, we know there may be not very good examples of circular economic practices as well. Let's say the fruits and vegetables from many market, the reject ones we know are being taken for different sort of users, right? One can argue it's a good practice or a bad practice, right? So what we really need is to bring in standards together with some of these practices and try and promote. But in order for us to do that, we need to take stock of what is there, right? And so what I'm trying to highlight, not only in Sri Lanka, across the world, small businesses have been practicing some of these good practices out of basically out of having very little choice about it. Because they have access to very little resources, they have access to little finances and all that. So if we are to use micro enterprises and women as a platform to push this forward, then we need to study it much further and try and design incentives and support that suit them, right? And as Vositha also said, it's a culture, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be the cheapest output at the end of the day, but it's a transformation of culture as well, not just economics and institutional systems. So lot of work has to be done, and it's going to be tough because we are talking about scattered group here, and the informal sector by itself shows that there are lots of challenges. But on the other hand, we can be creative and come out with some of these, you know, the policies and mechanisms that are being discussed for larger industries can be creatively, you know, adapted to them. Maybe we can get much more out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Visaka. Mr. Samantha, if you could go on your closing remarks, highlighting those aspects as well.
Yes, adding to the same impact, the culture matter is also, I would like to stress, because when one of the priority is to create a market for those
Mr. Samantha.
In such a case, circular subs that sort of consensus in Helsinki. This, yes, hear me?
Yeah, Mr. Samantha, perhaps keeping your video off might be helpful to hear your audio more clearly. Mr. Samantha, can you hear me? Yes, now I can hear you. Sounds good. Mrs. Samantha, we can hear you. Mrs. Samantha, are you on the call?
Childwear, children's wear, they can go, I mean, people are there to take it on rental basis for 1 month, 2 month basis. When you afford to have a new cloth, are you ready to have a acquire cloth for short term and return somebody which has used by somebody? Do you have that consciousness in people? Similarly, then, for example, in Japan, if you go to Akihabara now, next to the electronic products, you have second-hand products also in shops now. So second-hand laptop. So there's a market in Japan. So are you willing to go for a second-hand laptop when you are when you can afford a new laptop? So that is because of that consciousness about the resources scarcity and environmental costs. So therefore, that sort of culture also necessary. Then this regarding the market impact, this sustainable public procurement policy will be very useful, because the manufacturers can do their businesses. So that is there. In fact, regarding the related to the previous questions, also I would like to mention, to make it practical, these circular economy principles, you have to adopt particularly this eco design has to be adopted. Then this product replaced by services. That model has is very favorable. So then when you adopt those two models by a company, then of course the products are owned by the company. After lifetime, you can easily collect it back. So then by the time when the eco-design principles are used, you can easily disassemble products, components are ready for recirculation. So with those, only you can easily go for this total resource recirculation, which may achieve about 80% of the resource circulation technically. So in Sri Lankan case, I would like to mention one point now. We are very much weak in this, as I mentioned, reverse logistics. That means used products under the disposal stage. How can you recover in the pure form and direct to the manufacturer? So that loop is very weak. So again, a lot of things has to be done there. So you have to give some status to the scavengers, and then technology can be used. So thereby you can make it possible, because most of the people who are willing to use the waste for their product or to increase the recycled content, of course they don't have recycled materials to source. That problem is there. So that is why this part has to be strengthened. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samantha. I would like next to go to Dr. Sugathapala for closing remarks.
Thank you. Yeah, quickly, although we had this circular economy concepts have been elaborated years and years, there are a lot of tools. One of the keys to adapt to the local context. You can't just take it and then enforce here. So we need the capacity to adopt, but as a, overall, I would say Sri Lanka, the society and individual culture is not geared for these transformational changes. There are a lot of resistance to changes. That's maybe in line with what some of the comments made earlier. And another weak area is we are not very innovative. So we need innovative culture in the society and individuals, especially business innovations. Still, when compared to the other countries, even in the region, we are far behind. Another aspect is most of this concept we talk also involve technology. And in Sri Lanka, the technology absorption capacity is very weak. We don't know how to, this is a general comment, and there may be special cases, but generally, we are very weak in adopting technologies to suit our requirements. So therefore, we again face this issue. Then lack of information, data, also affect this whole process. It's again a part of it's a systemic issue. So therefore, we need, I think, more comprehensive intervention, especially by the government, central government, local government, maybe chambers, institution like NCPC, to uplift this situation, the competency building in the sector, the society, even awareness levels and so on. So we need that type of interventions. It's not just the policy, but there are very fundamental other cultural and this capacity requirement for us to even go for sustainable development as well as circular economy concepts. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sugathapala. Finally, I would like to ask Vositha to come in with your closing remarks.
Thank you, Thusitha. That was a very interesting conversation. I learned a lot also. I think since most of the stuff have been mentioned by the previous speakers, I would like to suggest some things like how standardization could help in integrating circular economy into climate and other development processes, because some of the elements that are highlighted are about how we are not adapting good practices and in production and also consumption, how the products are not marked in a way that people could choose, even if we are aware of what the impacts are and what would be the benefits of buying a certain product or a certain production choice. If we do not have the products listed in such a way for us to pick this, it would not be possible for us to buy the products that are helpful for the planet. So I think it would be important to have standardization of production, accreditation that is local. And I feel like Sri Lanka Accreditation Board is working on this at the moment, and eco-labeling projects that are being implemented or initiated rather at national level would help us identify these products which are helpful for communities as well as also healthy for the planet. So, and then how that also impacts our ambitious actions for climate-friendly production as well as consumption. So I'll stop with that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vositha. So I would like to thank all of our panelists, Dr. Thusitha Sugathapala, Dr. Visaka Hidellage, Engineer Samantha and Vositha Wijenayake for very insightful information and a very fruitful discussion with regard to how circular economic processes could support not only NDCs but overall climate action and sustainable development in the country. There were some gaps highlighted, some certain things that we could do in the future, and we have a very good group of participants, I think, from the private sector, universities, youth groups, several a very wide audience participating today. So I think we could, one key thing is, as discussed, is the awareness creation. Second one is, bringing in relevant policies and legislation in place, and also creating it a culture, a practice of supporting circular economic processes. Pricing might not necessarily be the key in certain areas to succeed in. So there are many things that came out. So probably all these key actors like the National Clean Production Centers, like and Trust, universities and other development agencies could support the countries going forward in this aspect. So we would, as Like and Trust, would move forward further with these initiatives that we are taking on. And we like to invite you all to be get connected with us and share your knowledge and then experience, and also resources that you have in future activities. Also do link with us in our future programs. You can go to our website www.slycantrust.org and get connected with us. While thanking all the panelists and everyone who attended today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.